that's a tough question because it all depends on the type of case it is, right? The more complicated a case it is, generally speaking, the more involved it is, and therefore the longer it's going to take. But you know, I personally have had wrongful death cases where I've written a letter and they've tendered $1 million because it was that egregious, right? And the liability was very clear. So in that particular situation, it only took maybe 30 days at best.
Yeah, it seems to be a direct relationship between the liability
and the extent of the damages.
Certainly the damages and the liability. If they're both very egregious, there's probably going to be a faster resolution.
Yeah,
And the policy.
and yeah, the amount of the policy, the potential exposure to the carrier to fight it or not. Because if, for example, there's a paraplegic resulting from an accident and there's $100,000, they're not going to take a chance in fighting that, even if the liability aspect of it is unbelievably difficult. They're just going to probably tender it and then not risk any type of exposure.
And I think it's important at that point to, the insurance company has the responsibility to protect their insured. So they've got to, if able, settle that case or resolve it within the policy limits and
Right.
not expose them. So it's not
And expose them to personal financial
Liability.
requirements or liability. So it's very important
Too,
too.
of how long it'll take for your auto accident case to settle. A lot of variables go into it, but one of the most important ones is how long are you treating? Because as attorneys, you know, there's rare situations where we will ask for the policy limits before the person is done treating, especially in those cases where the client is extremely injured and the policy limits aren't that high. But generally, we are not going to go to an insurance company and ask them for money until the client is done treating, because the insurer will then ask, well, he's still treating, we still want to see the medical bills. So there's a lot of variables at play. How long are you actually treating for? How long, you know, once your treatment is completed, is that case settled quickly? Or does that case then, if it doesn't settle quickly, do we need to put it into litigation, which then has you know, hundreds of other variables of how long the litigation lasts for, whether or not they want to settle quickly at mediation, or if the case ultimately has to go to trial. So that question, you know, can go anywhere from, hey, I got hit the other day and there's a check in the mail within a couple weeks, to I got hit and it's 6 years later and we're getting ready for trial. So
That's a very good point. You know, we never even talked about the litigation, but you know, this whole process is really segmented into two areas: pre-suit and litigation. The pre-suit can last as long as a year or beyond, and if we are not able to get a satisfactory resolution within the pre-suit process, then the litigation process begins, and then all bets are off, right? Because that could last 6 months or it could last 10 years. We've had cases that run the gamut.
That's true.
Yeah, even through the appellate process. So.